handling financial aid and those kinds of things. And he said to me that our industry is as regulated as the healthcare industry, and it has to do with federal dollars that the healthcare industry receives as well as us, meaning we get federal dollars through financial aid. And we are so highly regulated, it's hard to even imagine. That financial aid group, they live by, the attention to detail that they have to pay every single day, or we would get in trouble. So we are compliance and audit driven. Sometimes it drives us all crazy, but we track and follow compliance from the initial phone call that we receive from a student to placement and every step along the way. Just give you a couple of examples. All of our ADAs are shopped on the phone, listen to their phone calls at least, I'd say, once a week, every one of them. And then I get a report whether or not, as does the Senior Director of Admissions, to tell us if there were any infractions on the phone. So if one of our ADAs would ever say, you can get a great job in this field, that would be a huge infraction. We can't promise jobs, kind of thing. So those calls are listened to so regularly that they are trained what they can say and what they can't say. And so when you hear students say, oh, so-and-so in admissions promised me this great job, it's just not happening. And we never have infractions. We've never fired an employee in our admissions department because of an infraction. They have been trained so well that they know what not to say. A level 4 infraction, you're gone. They walk you out the door. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So, I mean, that's just an example of one of the things that happens. We're all doing our internal training, right? So an ADA cannot text a student until they've enrolled. Now, you as faculty members can because they're an enrolled student. But if I'm Frank Carter and trying to get a hold of a student who said they were interested in coming to school, I can't text him. I have to pick the phone up, or I have to get him through an email, but I cannot text him. That's one of the compliance rules, okay? Let me see what some of the other things. We talked about placement. We talked about in-field placement. There has to be, we track salaries, and it has to be within the gainful employment guidelines. If it's under a certain salary, you can't count it, or it takes forever to count it. Accreditation, we talk about making sure that we teach the full hours in a class. If we let a class out early, we're out of compliance, and that's why we have that evening school report, and we monitor who leaves early. It can cause huge, huge problems for us. When we have a snow day and everyone hates me because I don't close, that's because we then have to make those hours up. So having a snow day is just nothing but a hassle, okay? When we have a holiday, right, we have to extend the day for 6, sessions by 45 minutes or a half hour, because we have a contract with the student that we are going to teach them a certain amount of hours. And if we're not in class doing that, if they're not, that's up to them. It really is up to them. They're paying for us to offer the hours, then they decide if they want to be there. But if we don't offer the hours, we are out of compliance. And that's why, we're always, I review that night report every night. It comes, and usually Drew gets an email from me about 10 minutes after it comes out. Why did so-and-so leave early? Why aren't there students in the class, etc. It is a compliance-driven industry, and that can kill us. Just that alone is bad.
That's why we walk every morning. One of us is assigned 9 o'clock. Walk in, peek your head in every room, make sure the teacher's there. And then we have someone every night at 10 or 10:30 send a report. Okay, was the teacher there and were there students there?
So, are there any rules that you think, why are we doing that? All of our rules, I think, why are we doing it? But most of it is really compliance driven. And then now we are doing internal audits. Our central services is we're doing what we call desktop reviews, AKA audit. And looking at the registrar's office, really, because that's where a lot of the data gets held, you know, really a lot of data out of there. We're looking at change in grade forms, you know, do they look reasonable? Does someone move from an F to an A? That's gonna raise a red flag. There's a lot of detail that people say, well, you know, if I'm missing a signature, what does it matter? Right?
We're looking. Pat used the signature as an example.
And I have to push it back to people because that will be an audit finding. I don't like to live like that. I'm not an auditor by nature, but we all have to make sure the health of the school is protected, and that is by, you know, really paying attention to all that level of detail and making sure we have it right. So, that's it. Any questions? I know it's really boring stuff, but I do want you to realize like why we do what we do, and why, you know, I call you into my office and say, why isn't this form filled out right? We need to get it done. Why are you letting your class out 15 minutes early? It's a huge risk factor for us.
Speaking of forms and filling them out properly, I have a question on one. It's just such a great opportunity.
Sure.
Change of grade forms. There's a little checkbox that says, is there documentation for why this change of grade is? I've never been asked to put something in it. I've always checked it off. I keep something in my own internal records, but when I send in that change of grade form, it's just a form. Is there something we're supposed to be backing that up with?
Yes.
What?
Now, one of the things that we're talking about in our department chair meeting is that, because that was one of the desktop audit findings, they want you to have the paperwork that the student turned in that motivated that grade change. So if it was the fact that they took the final exam,
Okay.
put a copy of the final exam, and you put in detail, they made a 65, now they have an 80 because they completed the final exam attached.
Usually what it is I print off their grade report that shows that their grades are all filled in now. Because most of the time they missed the last week of school or something like that.
Right.
So if I circled that, that would be sufficient evidence.
Yeah, they don't want to see change from a D to an A, and then you just put submission of late work, you know, and that's it. They want the actual work attached and the detail on there as to why they got what they received.
So you want the final as well as the, okay, all right.
I'm glad you asked
The
that. 'cause
thick
that's an-
packets will start to accumulate.
That's okay. The more detailed, the better.
Okay.
So, you know, I hope when, you know, you joined us that you really sensed our need to be focused on customer service and our students. That parallels with, in my opinion, compliance and auditing and all of that. Because we need to ensure our students are leaving with the skill set they need, that they've had the right amount of hours in class, that they've had all of that, and that their education is equivalent to another college or university in the area. So I know we treat our students great. I know our students, you know, the Noel Levitz is going out today. We're doing that in many classes. Well, that's our report card from our students. They'll tell us what we're doing right and wrong. They'll tell us what's important to them and how we're doing in those fields. But we can't forget the compliance piece. We just can't. And so we've had 2 huge audits over the last couple of months in every department. You know, it's gone from financial aid to admissions to career services, et cetera. And I believe that's going to continue. I think there's going to be a heightened awareness of the attention to detail. So if I push something back and say, where's the signature? You know where it's coming from. Questions?
Karen, I'd like to say that on Fridays, whenever I'm getting the attendance, I've noticed that it's most of the time the same students. And I must admit that I've had several students just within the last couple of weeks to get very angry with me because I'm texting them, calling them, probably 4 or 5 times. I find that texting is the best way to get to them. But one student in particular told me that they had dropped from Brown Mackey the week before, and I had no knowledge of that, and then all of a sudden I am trying to get them to post or to do whatever, and come to find out they're getting angry with me because I'm calling them. So if we could sort of know by Tuesday on these students that they are out and that this is happening, I would appreciate it, because,
Do you want
Yeah,
to,
we
I
know
don't
on
know how that
Monday,
happened.
the issue, there was one student, I'm sure it's the one you're referring to.
right,
That the registrar's office mistakenly did not drop, and they went back and dropped them with the batch that was dropped yesterday. So there was one that it was an oversight from last week.
right.
They
And
fixed
the
that.
thing is, I just don't want a bad rapport,
Sure.
but at the same time, I have no way of knowing that these students didn't,
Has that ever happened before?
I can't remember. I will say that our drops are just significantly getting better. I mean, it's just getting to a point where, just like this week, we had 3.
Yeah.
And it's getting better. One thing that I am finding also, and I mentioned it to Drew, is the fact that on several of the people on the list, I get into e-college, like if they don't post on Friday night, Saturday morning, first thing I do is to say, why haven't you posted by a text? And I can't even get in touch with the student. Number one, the phone number is incorrect on the list, and the second thing is, I get into e-college to try to find out how to get in touch with them, and they're not even in e-college on the list to email them.
If you ever have contact, anybody having trouble reaching a student, let me know or let the department chair know.
You remember the student that I had
Oh, yeah.
that this
Because we
week?
may have multiple phone numbers, we may only have one, but we might have a work number, another phone number, and you have email addresses. We always have probably extra contact information if there's one you can't reach. We'll be happy to share all of that.
The other thing is, as faculty members, if you collect phone numbers from students at the beginning of the class, if you submit them to the registrar's office, they'll double check to make sure it's the right number.
And they'll add new numbers in, that's why we have the syllabus, the last page that they fill out and you submit, that's for that reason.
So, Sally Smith is in your class this month.
Right.
She's changed her phone number 3 times.
Well, I know that one thing that has really helped out, and I know this is no big deal to a lot of people, but Mr. Camp has helped me with this. Some students that don't have internet at home, something's wrong with their iPad or whatever, they're sending it to my phone, and I am able to go to the library, him pull it off, email it back, and we can get a hard copy of it where it was in compliance to the day and the time it needed to be. We've had to go through that several times lately, just any way that we can to communicate.
Well, it's working.
It is working.
3 drops is pretty amazing. And just, Jody, you remind me of something. You had identified a couple of students who you thought might not be a graduate, a high school graduate, because everyone has to be a high school grad or a GED, after GED to be here. If they don't, they can't be here. And you pointed out that you thought, based on writing skills, that there are 2 people in your class. If you have situations like that, please alert us. We have 90 days to get the high school transcript. Normally, we get it the first 30 days. I track that through our accounting department, and one of the people you identified was a high school graduate. The other one had received a certificate but had gone back and gotten the act where they now can count it as a high school. You know that rule where they can count it as a high school diploma? So she completed the coursework but didn't pass the exit exam. So they can go back, the state has changed the rule, they can go back and get a regular high school diploma, and that's what she had. So she's gonna need help with, she has an IEP, she'll get special accommodation, but she's a high school grad. So but we go back,
So she's still in school?
Yeah, we ended up finding the best one to count now.
Just the 7? Oh, so she's not a non-pop, so she's,
Yeah,
we had one non-pog and the other was
right.
a student.
right, but I was thinking you were talking the non-pop.
No, the non-pog is a drop.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
definitely,
Yeah.
But this other student,
Oh, okay.
So
she
when we
has
say
gone back.
non-pog, it's non-proof of graduation.
Yeah.
So whenever you hear the term non-pog.
Right.
And if in a case you really think the skill set's lacking, you can alert us and we'll double check, because I don't want a student here, we can't have them continue if we find out they're non-pop.
How long had she been here?
The one was fine,
No, the other one, that was
Second
not.
one.
she was 5 weeks.
Start, no, second. Yeah, 5
Second
weeks.
month.
This is her second